Okay, we're having a quick look at the Major League Baseball player strike of 1994-1995. It's a very interesting period of time. It followed a lockout in 1990, so the NHL isn't the only Major League sports league in North America to have labour unrest. The Major League Baseball is pretty bad for it as well. It was the eighth player stoppage in baseball history, and it was the fourth in 22 years because there were strikes before this in 1972, 1981, and 1985, plus a lockout in 1990. So there had been a history of labour unrest in the previous 2 decades leading up to the 94 player strike. It was the longest sports strike in history, only surpassed in 2004-2005 by the NHL lockout of that year. Basically, the situation was very, very similar to the NHL a decade later in that there was a poor financial situation with the league itself, concerns about TV rights and club finances. There was a salary cap proposed by the team owners. Now, this was very similar to what happened a decade later with the NHL, a salary cap being proposed and the players rejecting. Uh, the year before the strike, CBS had lost the rights in 1993 to host Major League Baseball, so there were concerns over the TV rights. So NBC and ABC came in to share the rights. Due to the strike, the Major League Baseball and the television companies lost over $595 million in revenues lost because of this player strike. The strike lasted 232 days, which, as I said at that time, was a record for player unrest. The NHL's longest strike at that point had been 10. And this is the same year of the NHL first lockout, but the NHL player strike of 1992 had been 10 days. So you think ice hockey's bad when it comes to labour unrest. One of the striking things was post-strike attendance. So when the league started up again in the 95-96 season, or the 1995 season, to go forward, attendance was down in some locations by as high as 20%. 20% drop in attendance. One of but the thing is, there's been no player unrest since 94-95. However, they still have not introduced a salary cap in Major League Baseball. They have a luxury tax. So basically, some teams are more competitive than others. There's a competitive imbalance within the league, which is where the NHL is a difference. The difference between the NHL lockout and this player strike was the NHL did bring in a salary cap, and only 4 teams have lost value since 2004-2005. Whereas Major League Baseball, some teams regularly struggle. Talking about that, the Montreal Expos, who were a Canadian team, were forcibly purchased by the Major League Baseball in 2001 due to ongoing financial issues as a result of this strike in 94-95. They were eventually moved to Washington, D.C. after being owned by the league for 3 years in 2004. So a team went out of business because of this strike and had to be relocated. Other teams have since been relocated and have struggled since this strike. But one of the lasting impacts was the Montreal Expos having to be purchased by the league because of, well, financial issues and the lack of a salary cap. Some of the players are on massive contracts that make the NHL contracts, like Conor McDavid's, look tiny. Major League Baseball has had other scandals, the juicing the ball scandal since this strike. So baseball is struggling, and in some cases never got back that 20% fan base. Some fans decided to go to Major League Soccer. Major League Soccer was starting up, and that's where a lot of the fan base came from. American football, that took fans. Basketball, ice hockey, they took up the slack where 20% drop off in fan attendance in the short term. Attendances aren't quite back at their peak, but they are improving. But in the short and medium term, attendances were down. This is something the NHL must avoid if there is to be another lockout, because to highlight some of the issues that have occurred because of player unrest, this is a worrying trend here. The fact that they had 4 labour stoppages in 22 years and a lockout, which basically makes it 5. This is something I think the NHL would be keen to avoid. Also, the salary cap. That's something that Major League Baseball's never brought in, and players didn't agree with that. This is a big thing, okay? TV rights. TV rights are crucial for many sports, but if you're losing as a league and TV companies losing nearly just over $500 million in 232 days, um, that's a killer to the league. And here's another thing: attendance down, and I'm going to highlight that. That's another thing that the NHL, as another league that's had labour unrest, needs to be aware of, is the attendance. The fact that the team had to be purchased by the league and then sold on is another issue that I think the NHL, as a sister league, is in a sense it's another major league. It's had its own labour unrest, and this is why I look at the Major League Baseball. I don't do many videos on baseball, but the issue within baseball is the salary cap. There still isn't one. TV rights is an issue. They haven't. The TV companies are still remembering those massive losses. The TV companies remember that, and that's where TV rights and media rights, when they constantly come up for agreement and renegotiation, NBC and ABC and other TV companies will look at that massive loss that was taken. The attendance being down 20%. That would be a concern because we've since had the steroid scandal in baseball, and attendances are down by nearly a quarter in some locations, and some locations haven't fully recovered to sell out games. So there is still fan disenchantment with the league and the sport. But there we go. There's a brief look at the MLB 94-95 player strike. I think it was the most crucial labour unrest in any sport I think you'll ever find. The NHL lockout obviously surpasses it for length, but a lot of the issues within that caused the strike haven't been resolved long term. There is still no salary cap in Major League Baseball, as far as I'm aware. It's more of a luxury tax, which is more flexible, and it means many teams aren't as competitive as they could be. But this is something that the NHL has to be aware of when it comes to the end of its current collective bargaining agreement, is the TV rights, is the possible loss of money, and the fact you could lose vast sums of attendance, which then becomes a revolving cycle of we've got to keep costs down, we've got to give cost certainty. And the league has made massive strides in growing, with Vegas joining the league and Seattle going to be joining. That is a risk on this. The losses on money, the losses on attendance, teams being forced to move by being bought by the league until sold. That's something I think the NHL will want to avoid, and baseball down the line. I'm surprised there hasn't been more labour unrest in baseball since 94-95. I'm really, really surprised. And in my lifetime, they also had a lockout as well. So I'm surprised baseball hasn't had a reoccurrence of this, with owners saying they're losing money, because the NBA and I believe the NFL are now ahead of Major League Baseball in revenues earned. They are. And Major League Soccer has picked up a lot of fans because of the aftermath of the player strike. For the first couple of seasons, fans decided to watch other sports if they were going to watch a sport or participate. So Major League Baseball took a hit. But there we go. There's a brief little look at the player strike of 94-95. Thank you very much for watching. I don't do many baseball videos on this channel, but occasionally I do, and I decided to do a little research on this, and I could look into the lockout in 1990 or all the player strikes if I really wanted to. And the fact there have been 8 stoppages in baseball history, that says a lot. There we go. Thank you very much for watching, and please like and subscribe, place your comments below, and I'll have some more videos for you soon.